All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Saturday morning once again with Mr. Greg Ehrenberg. We have a 9-game main slate that we will talk about. We have a hard out at 5 minutes before the top of the hour because we have NFL preseason live before lock that will be coming on after us. We also have MMA live before lock today, and then we have another MLB live before lock before the main slate. So we've got a full day of content. Tomorrow you'll get the MLB live before lock as well as a NASCAR live before lock. And then there's Sunday night football. If I read the schedule correctly, there will be a live before lock for that as well. We can just reach out and touch the NFL Week 1 season here. It is just literally right around the corner. We're going to have our home league drafts in full swing here over the next 3 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. Greg, are you ready to turn the clock on yet another new sport?
Well, for me, football season starting, for me, it's like, basketball is almost here. There was a point when I really liked NFL Week 1. Do you remember when it was a point for sites when they were trying to grow, where Week 1 was massive overlay? Like it was
like 20% overlay across the board, no matter what.
It was guaranteed. No matter where you played NFL Week 1, you were going to get overlay on DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo. There was all those new sites that were popping up. There's less of an effort to grow in that same way, so you don't get it. Like, yeah, it's cool that we get NFL back. There's another way, but not quite. Like, you used to feel like it was a free money holiday. We don't quite have that anymore. But yeah, football starting up. Then we got basketball right around the corner, which is what I am personally most excited for. But it's all the more reason that people should be signing up to get a Stokastic Plus Platinum membership, because we've got all these sports and it covers all of them.
Absolutely. And you can get 50% off your first week if it's your first subscription. Use the promo code MLB Strategy Show, all one word, MLB Strategy Show, to get 50% off any 1 week package. For those of you interested in preseason, we also have the promo code TUA that will get you all preseason projections for just $5. That's for the rest of the preseason. Jump on in and take advantage of that one. That one can actually make you money easily. You just got to net $5 off of that one and you're free and clear. So enjoy that. Please do hit the like button. Also subscribe. We're marching our way towards 80,000 subscribers. And to celebrate today, let's give a little free content to celebrate that future milestone of $80,000. We're going to give you the Night Owl free. That is the MLB for DraftKings, all tools free tonight. That's part of the DK Night Owl package. You can just click the link below us to get that, but you can look at the tools and projections, and it's I forget if it's a 2 or a 3 game slate. They kind of, depending on which site you're on, I think DK ended up doing a 2 game slates for the 8 o'clock and on games. But we're going to jump into it here. We will talk about prize picks and we'll hit a little bit on the early slate, but we've got to get a move on, as they say. So jumping off with our first game here, Cincinnati Reds at Pittsburgh. 1, the DraftKings pricing broken on Pittsburgh. 2, completely shattered for the Giants. You thought it was bad yesterday? No. Do you want to play some $3,500 or less starters? Go to the Giants. Pittsburgh looking like a perfect pivot away from that at a couple positions. They're going against Justin Dunn, the well-traded, not well-traveled, but well-traded Justin Dunn. He's been back for 3 starts, dealt with, I believe he had shoulder surgery. He was with the Mariners last year, had some shoulder instability that was causing some issues. He was the 19th overall draft pick in his draft. He came out of Boston College after 3 years. He was drafted out of high school, but in like the 37th round or something crazy like that. So he is someone that could turn into something decent. He was part of New York draft. The Mets drafted him, dealt him and Jared Kelenic over to Seattle for who was it? Edwin Diaz and Robbie Cano. That was a disaster trip. Well, Diaz, I guess, is good. And then ultimately Seattle traded Dunn to Cincinnati as part of the Jesse Winker, Eugenio Suarez. So if you look at trading Cano and Diaz for Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker, that's a better deal than the Jared Kelenic Dunn part. What do you want to do with this one? I was surprised that I did end up writing up Pittsburgh as the secondary alternative stack away from Colorado, but it does make sense and it does look decent. Poke some holes in that one. It was 5:30 in the morning when I was writing today. I got up really early.
Yeah. So the only way to poke holes in it is that Pittsburgh is really popular today. We have Pittsburgh and San Francisco are combined to make up about 40% of the ownership on DK for the main slate today. So we have 13% ownership going to Pittsburgh, 27% going to San Francisco. And I think that these two teams are so popular that it's pretty easy to just differentiate by playing other teams. And Justin Dunn's terrible. And by the way, he's terrible in a way that people don't even realize. All the things we say about Noah Syndergaard in terms of holding runners, Justin Dunn is just as bad. Guys get on base against Justin Dunn. It is free reign to steal second, steal third base. I forget exactly what the numbers are, but it's like he allows a stolen base once every 2.5 innings or something like that. So he allows a ton of stolen bases against him. And then he's also just flat out bad. And he's coming off a shoulder injury that has a velocity way down. So there was a point in time where he was considered a really good pitching prospect. And now post-injury, the last time we saw him pitch, his average fastball velocity was 93.8 miles per hour. It's 92 this year. So that's down quite a bit. And then you have that goes along with an 8.64 ERA and 9.67 expected ERA. So it's clearly a good spot for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The only pushback is, do they warrant being 13% owned over on DraftKings? I don't know the Pirates are ever warranted that kind of ownership unless they were going up against Jose Urena at Coors Field, which didn't go particularly well for the Giants yesterday. But then also on FanDuel, same situation, 13% ownership for Pittsburgh. We have them with 6% top stack odds on both the sites. It's too much ownership on Pittsburgh for me, so I'm going to be looking elsewhere.
Hey, when it wasn't too much ownership? 5:30 this morning before our tools were out.
Yeah, no, I mean that's totally fair. If I was just looking at, I would never expect. There's never a slate where I would expect the Pirates to be this popular. Just looking at the matchups.
Yes. All right. And then to piggyback on your comment about Dunn, that jogged my memory. It caught my eye on his minor league game logs. His last 3 starts, he allowed 3, 5, and 2 stolen bases. He did allow 2 stolen bases in his first start back in the majors. He didn't allow any in his second, but 5 stolen bases in a minor league. You can run on this guy. That's an excellent call out there, Greg. All right. Anything else from this game? I guess we're staying away from the pitchers. No need to go to
It's not just that they aren't good pitchers. It's a 15% K rate for Justin Dunn, 13.9% for Tyler Beede. So when it comes to the Reds on the other side of the game, it's another team that's fairly cheap. So they're picking up some ownership, but it's not problematic. 5% owned team today on the aggregate. So in terms of ownership, it's about reasonable. It's a good matchup, but the Reds suck. So if you're playing large field tournaments, you have some exposure to them. That's cool, but it's far from a priority.
All right. We have Sean G in the chat, not to be confused with Sean V.
Oh,
This get a little tricky here. Thank God they spell their names differently. Otherwise, it could be a disaster. Moving on to our next game here. We've got the Rangers in Minnesota taking on the Twins. Glenn Otto had a decent start. He's had some moments here. Chris Archer, he's going to be out there for about 4 innings or so. I'm not really excited, obviously not for the pitchers. I'm not overly excited by the hitters here. Neither is Vegas. 3.8 implied run total there for Texas, 4.8 for the Twins. It's a little more intriguing with the Twins. You've got Kepler, who's been scuffling a little bit, Jose Miranda, better against lefties, and then you've got Byron Buxton, who has just been a golden god when he's in the lineup. There's a little bit of intrigue there, but Otto actually has adequate underlying metrics, or he's going to land in the category of potentially could be a better real life pitcher than fantasy option, because he doesn't get enough strikeouts here. What is your lean on this matchup, Greg?
Yeah, it's not a bad spot for the Twins. Otto this year, it is a 4.96 ERA, a 5.51 expected ERA. I just looked at the 5.51. I was like, 55 point, that would be crazy. Like 55 expected ERA there. But yeah, the only thing that would be kind of a knock against Glenn Otto is you'd say he is a fairly high ground ball rate pitcher, but so many of the fly balls that he does allow against him end up being for home runs. So he has allowed a homer in every single start since July 12th. And it's not like he's had some of the toughest matchups either. He's gone against the Angels, and that was without Mike Trout, against Oakland, on the road in Seattle. That was when Julio Rodriguez was out, and that's also a pitcher-friendly ballpark. So I don't think Glenn Otto is particularly good, and the Twins picking up some ownership, nothing crazy. One thing that I'm going to really try to prioritize in my lineups, at least as of now, just looking at where the field is going with ownership, everybody's paying up for the same pitchers. And then at offense, everybody's generally going to the San Francisco Giants or the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. So with that in mind, I think the most sensible way to differentiate is to pay up for offense, pay up for some of the really elite offenses against weaker starting pitching, which we'll talk about later. Something like the Seattle Mariners, the Colorado Rockies, the St. Louis Cardinals, and then maybe try to save money a pitcher, just have complete inverse builds of what the field is doing. So the Twins are one of those teams that I think makes sense, but not my favorite. We'll talk about more of the teams I like more later.
All right. For chat mentioning Buxton has not been elite this year. 292 isolated power and same-handed matchups across 263 at-bats. Pretty damn elite for that perspective. Let's keep moving on here just to see what's going on. We have game 2 of the New York Mets and Philadelphia Phillies doubleheader. There wasn't a line on it when I pulled this earlier, but it is going to be David Peterson going against Bailey Falter. Seems like this would be a spot where it's much better to take a gander at some of the offenses. We'll want to keep watch on anybody playing in the early game for a chance they may not play in the late game. Anybody that's a veteran, anybody that's dinged up, or ideally the catchers, although we could see I haven't seen that early lineup, but Real Muto or somebody could always end up as the DH as well. How do you want to approach this one? Could this be where you look for some offensive differentiation, Greg?
Yeah. So one thing that I will point out is that we don't currently have this game in our top stacks tool, mostly because it's a doubleheader that screws with the data sometimes. And let me check. I know the game is on the DraftKings slate. Is it on the FanDuel slate though? FanDuel. Yeah, so it's on both slates, both FanDuel and DraftKings. I'm interested to see what the ownership ends up being for the Mets because I like the spot for them against Bailey Falter. And I was saying before that with all the field gravitating towards the same low cost. Oh, never mind. We do have the Mets in here, but still the data isn't going to be totally correct because it always gets screwed with for double headers. And then what happens later on in the day when we get updated projections, lineups for the doubleheader, stuff gets updated. So we only have 1.2% projected ownership for the Mets. If that's actually the case, I would end up loving the Mets. But stuff like the top stack odds, the ownership, that's all going to get changed after the first game of the slate ends and lineups come in for the second game. But Bailey Falter, 4.5 ERA, 5.71 FIP this year, and then also a 17.2% home run to fly ball rate. That is a lot of home runs allowed per fly ball. Also, only a 28.8% ground ball rate. So this is a pitcher that I think could be giving up a ton of home runs for fantasy purposes moving forward. And it's not like this is some high-end prospect type pitcher. He's 25 years old. His minor league results this year were decent. It is kind of in a smaller sample size, though. And anytime he's been up at the big leagues, it's gone poorly for him. So I think there's a lot of upside in the Mets here. And this is one of the teams where if they do end up being low owned, really good way to differentiate from what the field is doing.
Most definitely here. We just got their morning lineup as expected. It's pretty much everybody in there. You've got Michael Perez at catcher batting ninth, but everybody else is their typical lineup against right-handers. So we'll see if anybody gets dinged up, pulled early, etc. Before we get to that late game there. We got a super chat here from Phil Still, $20. Thank you, Phil. He says, thanks, guys. No, thank you, Phil. Thank you. Thanks for the great content. Finished second in the DK 5K solo shot. Keep up the great work. Likewise, Phil. Likewise.
Yeah, and then I believe he messaged me on Twitter, and I actually think he made a stack combination of Adam and I's favorite stacks yesterday in large field tournament. So my favorite stack, which I played in single entry last night, was the Atlanta Braves against Lance McCullers, and Adam's favorite when we were doing the show yesterday was the Baltimore Orioles. They were pretty good yesterday if you picked up on that. So yeah, those were the two top offenses yesterday. He paired them together and then used some lower owned pitchers. And yeah, Sandoval was also crushed last night at low ownership. So yeah, yesterday was a really good slate. And I wish I would have been able to play more. I was out celebrating with my family. My brother got a new job and we were out celebrating that. But I did play one lineup yesterday in large field tournaments. It was a Brave stack, ended up being profitable. So I was happy with the slate overall.
The Ehrenberg clan has quite a few celebrations. Sister arriving, sister going back to college, parents potentially moving, mom's meatball night. You guys have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Meatball night's a big one. And then my other brother got a haircut, which is huge for my dad. My dad loves when my brother gets a haircut because he grows his hair out really long. My dad gets really upset. So I think my dad was more excited that my other brother got a haircut than my other brother got a new job. But all good times to be had.
It is what it is.
My dad is the exact same, Greg. He has basically a celebration with all his friends at the bar every time me or my brother gets a haircut.
Yeah, haircut's a big deal. I don't know why he cares, but he does.
All right, and Mike Campbell would like to point out, happy birthday, Greg. I almost missed that on the calendar, but there we go. Greg is celebrating a birthday today. Greg celebrates a birthday every day.
You know, it's funny. It actually is my real birthday next week.
Oh, so we're definitely not going to mention it on whatever day that is. That won't be a birthday celebration.
August 23rd. August 23rd.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. How do you feel about Zach Wheeler that would be the early matchup. Let me go back and refilter this. No,
David Peter. We just talked about Bailey Falter. So next it would be David Peterson, who's expected to start for the Mets. You know, it's a tough matchup going up against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Peterson has shown really good strikeout upside. This is another one of those things where let's see what some of our data says later on in the day when we get an ownership update. If he's going to be really unowned, here's where David Peterson would make sense. Yesterday, talked about this when it came to the Giants as a potential stack and all the ownership that was going to them. If you want to stack up the Giants, who are really cheap, you could play them with basically any pitcher. One reasonable way to differentiate would potentially be playing a low-owned David Peterson, who has a 3.3 ERA this year, a 4.04 expected ERA, and a 27.2% K rate. So he's shown fantasy upside this year. The actual results are decent, and then the strikeouts are really high. So when Peterson has one of his good starts, it usually leads to big fantasy outings because that K rate is so significant. So if he's going to end up being 5% owned, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but a really contrarian pitcher, that he'd be a pitcher I think that would make sense with a team like the Giants that's expected to be fairly popular.
All right. A couple of good pitchers in our next one here. Christian Javier, 10,500. Again, with the broken pricing on DraftKings, we're going to get to Gilbert. We're going to get to Musgrove, but the salary doesn't matter today on DraftKings. So we can give Christian Javier some consideration as a potential differentiation play. Always a tough matchup going against Atlanta. Default forecast for nearly every Midwest game and every East Coast game is slight chance of rain. There you go. Nothing looks like it's going to be canceled. Maybe some games could have delays, but I don't think we'll see any postponements. But check your various games before their first pitches, respectively. The one that looked the diciest, just quickly covering that, is the Chicago-Milwaukee game. That's a 2:00 game today, Eastern time. If you need to bail on that one, you can just move players into that Baltimore-Boston game, which is a 4:00 game. So you have a little bit of an out there. If you go that route and it ends up looking poorly. I have not looked at the forecast since this morning, so there was an afternoon window where they could play, and it didn't. It just seemed to be shifting around on the different forecasts. But back to Atlanta, the default forecast there for the next 4 weeks is going to be chance of showers. That's about it. As things start to cool in the evening and the high humidity goes down, that tends to lend itself to thunder showers. On the other side here, we have Spencer Strider. He has been excellent from a strikeout perspective. It is never easy going against Houston. Last night, Yordan Alvarez ended up leading the game. Apparently, the in-game fireworks after, I'm assuming what was after a home run, impacted his breathing, or is what the story seemed to be. I didn't read all of the details, but he ended up going to the hospital. They're expecting him to play tonight, but if he got, I can't even. I was almost painted myself into a corner there, Greg, and said, if he gets a breather tonight, guess what? That would probably be why for that one. But keep an eye on that. Even if he's out of the lineup, still a tough ask here for Spencer Strider, but he would be heavy differentiation by going away from Gilbert or Musgrove. Thoughts on this game? And I'm sorry I didn't get to see your show yesterday for the Lance McCullers takes, because I think we did I believe you and I did a show, unless it was Terry, where you were saying you had more faith in him in his last start than I was going to, and I ended up playing more of him.
No, I've
that have been Terry then.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of McCullers.
It was more of a pitch count thing where we thought it was going to be higher than I thought it was. It wasn't like he was a stellar dominating option, but it was one to be over the field on instead of me zeroing him out. But I didn't play him last night either. But we're seeing two good pitchers going against each other, two good offenses. I don't want this to be a complete cross-off game. Do you have a lean anywhere on this one?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to not consider Spencer Strider whenever he pitches, because the strikeout rate is so crazy high for him. His K rate, and the same goes for Christian Javier. The strikeout rate for Strider is 37.2%. It's 32.2% for Javier. And then you look at Strider's numbers across the board, 2.61 expected ERA. His FIP is right around 2. So, I mean, Strider's been one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. Like, take aside whether he's been one of the best rookies in baseball. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball, period. And I know the matchup against the Astros is difficult, but we don't know if Yordan Alvarez is going to be in the lineup or not because of the shortness of breath thing from last night. It doesn't seem to be anything significant. But also, you consider where the Astros are in the standings. Even if they said that he could be good to play tonight, like, why take the chance, right? Give him an extra day to recover. You've got a 10-game lead in the division or whatever it is at this point. Give him the night off. That's the case. Strider looks even better. They're both really popular today. About 40% ownership for Strider on DK, 25% on Javier. Over on FanDuel, Strider 22% owned. Javier a little more reasonable there at 9%. But there's a lot of strikeout upside. I understand why the field's going there. And these are pitchers who could give up runs and still have good fantasy outings because the strikeouts are so high. We've seen it a couple times with Strider this year. He'll give up 3 or 4 runs, but he strikes out 10, 11, 12 guys, and it just doesn't really matter. He's one of these pitchers who is almost matchup proof because he could give up those runs, still generate strikeouts, and he throws so hard and his stuff is so good. Then when he's on, nobody's hitting him anyway. So I think Spencer Strider and Christian Javier both make sense in large field tournaments. I can't really consider the offenses, though, because the pitchers are so good.
All right. Over on Prize Picks, Spencer Strider has a 7 strikeout number. Would you be tempted to take the over on that?
It would probably be a stay away for me on Spencer Strider.
I'm trying to pull him up in Odd Shopper right now if you are as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think 7's a very reasonable strikeout projection for Spencer Strider. Like, okay. I think sports books have it at 7.5, but it's heavily juiced towards the under.
It is, and you can get a couple at 6.5, but the over's juiced, so it's kind of the right number.
Yeah, so I think 7's very fair. It would be a stay away.
And we have him projected at 6.5. I was just logging in there to get in there. And you guys can see these projections as well over on OddsShopper. All you have to do is just sign up with your email. And once you're logged in there, you will get the output of the DFS models that give the player prop projections there. Of course, we did that for basketball. We did it for football. We're doing it for baseball now. And hey, we have football and basketball right around the corner. It's a lot of fun. Even if you're in a state that does not have legalized sports wagering, you can utilize this tool on the cheap because it's free. Other than it costs an email address, you can utilize this tool to look at some of the other sites like Prize Picks or other sports wagering DFS sites, which can be a lot of fun. And don't worry, we're not going to spam you with email. I'm signed up with my regular email and I don't get very many notifications from us on this. So I can truthfully say you're not going to get spammed by it by signing up on this. And it's free. It's free. Let's see. Spencer Strider, 36.5 FanDuel points. Would you go over or under that one?
36.5. Let's see. Where do we have him projected for tonight? Which is also something that's useful with our projections. You could compare the projections we have on the site to the Prize Picks projections. And then if anything looks way off, might make sense for the props there over on Prize Picks. But in terms of the pitchers today, we have Strider. I mean, if I had to take a side, I guess it would be the under because we have Strider about 32.5, it looks like. Okay. So I would side towards the under if I had to pick a side, but I do think we're projecting Strider strikeouts a little bit too low. So if I had to take a side, I guess the under, but probably more of a stay away.
All right, let's get on to our next games here. We've got someone mentioned that FanDuel doing the rare doubleheader. Yes, it works out because the first game is at 1:00. That's the first game of the slate. And then the second game is a 7:15 game, and that is going to be on Fox Saturday Night Baseball, or one of the 3 featured games there. So I think they feel better about that, and they will include it in both of their slates. Looking at the pitching here, we've got Logan Gilbert, who has been outstanding in his second year with the Mariners. Been a rough month of August, though. I think we give him a mulligan for 2 of his starts. They were against the Yankees. Got a little bit knocked around there. Not a ton of strikeouts in those games, just a pair of strikeouts in each one. But aside from that, those rough games, he has allowed 4 runs just 3 times this year And in his other 17 starts, non-Yankee starts, those other 17 starts, 3 or fewer. That is pretty solid. You can also look to him in the strikeout market because he has, while it's been rough against that Yankees game, I've been seeing 4.5 was the number. It's a little bit juiced on the over, but that's a good number there. Or if you're using same game parlays there for the Mariners, you can always look to some of their alternate lines there. Usually can't take the under, but if you feel that that's a bit aggressive, you can drop down with to get a better number. It'll cost you, but hey, when you're doing the same game parlays, it's all about rocking 6 or 7 of them together to get a nice return on investment. Logan Gilbert, 8,000 on DraftKings, broken pricing, probably should be 9,500 in this one. How much would Logan Gilbert and would Musgrove be players you would go above the field on today from a strategy perspective, or would you try to come in a little lower?
So can you just sum it up?
My apologies. Yes. So when we get to real popular, whenever we get really popular pitchers. Now, last night was a rare occasion. I went over on Blake Snell. Didn't quite work out for me. Usually I try to go under or the high end pitchers, and then I try to pick a few mid-tier pitchers to go over just by 5 to 7%, because then it creates entirely different lineup constructions than what anybody else is doing. I'll come in under on the popular stacks. Like last night, I only played half of what the field was doing for the Rockies Giants game. That tends to spread me out on other teams, which then in a situation like that allows you, 1, to be different, and 2, on the stacks like that, you can be over the field on any team. With their respective matchups tonight, Musgrove and Gilbert look very, very good. It's harder for me to go under in situations like this, but I also don't like going over. So I will still go under, but probably not as aggressive. What is your take when we're getting a lot of concentrated players? I mean, you can build a Musgrove, Gilbert, full stack of Colorado on DraftKings and not even break the salary bank. It's a mess today. So that's where everybody's likely to go. How would you handle a leverage situation like this today?
Yeah, so I'm going contrarian at offense. So also, it's not like he's that popular. He's 13% owned over on FanDuel, 35% on DK. I don't think that's too much ownership for Caprillion, especially when you consider that he's pretty, for Logan Gilbert, pretty reasonably priced, 8,000 in a matchup against the Oakland A's. I think that he's definitely one of the better cost-saving options on the slate, because the other guys around that 8K mark, it's Alex Cobb, but he's in Coors Field. It's Braxton Garrett, but he's going up against the Dodgers. Josiah Gray on the road against the Dodgers. So I just look at all the pitchers in this price range. It's all right. If I'm not playing Caprillion, it means that I'm playing either Garrett against the Dodgers, Alex Cobb at Coors Field, Josiah Gray against the Padres. So I don't really like any of those spots all that much either. So my preference is to go with Logan Gilbert here and then just go more contrarian offense. That's, to me, I think the more sensible way to build lineups.
All right. SMP says, I thought Greg asked for a summation. He got a summation. There's no definition of the length of summation. Synopsis is what he should have said if he wanted me to keep it short.
No. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't say it had to be short. By the way, because people are talking about Ozuna in chat this year. Do you know who is the single least valuable player in baseball this year by wins above replacement?
I do not know.
Marcell
Ozuna.
Yeah, he's been terrible. Like people in chat are going, you can't throw around the word terrible. He has, I don't understand how anybody thinks he hasn't been terrible this year by any measurement. Ozuna this year has a 79 WRC plus. So some people in chat say they don't like WRC plus. He is worth negative 1.1 wins above replacement. That is the worst of any player, position player, or pitcher in baseball. Some people don't like wins above replacement. All right, he's a 214 batting average. He's a 263 on base percentage. By what measurement is he not terrible? I don't know. I don't know where people look at him and think he's been not I don't know where anybody looks at him and thinks he's been good.
Maybe in his personal. No shit.
Oh yeah. He's
good there.
It's crazy that he was able to go nearly a full year between arrests. That's quite the feather in his cap. And then even if you go back to last year, where you might say this year is a fluke. The Braves won the World Series last year, not because of Ozuna. He had a 73 WRC plus last year, a 213 batting average, a 288 on base percentage, also negative 0.3 wins above replacement. And by all metrics, he's one of the worst defensive players in baseball. So no, I don't think he's good at all.
No, but man, when he and Giancarlo Stanton were both together on the Marlins, they look like middle linebackers when they'd be standing next to each other. Like, you guys gonna play for the Dolphins on the weekend? Crazy. They're giant.
Also, because the rebuttal here from Corey A. Jefferson is that it's because he doesn't bat high in the order. That has no impact on these stats. Batting average, on base percentage, WRC plus, it's not impacted at all by where you bat in the batting order.
That's terrible.
Oh, Charles Barkley. I didn't. Oh my God, Charles Barkley is standing right behind Tyler.
Was that him? I didn't realize. That's Tyler. That's a tremendous impression.
That's very good.
Do it again, Tyler. Do the impression again.
Terrible. That's terrible.
Now do it with an Irish accent as Charles Barkley. All right. Now that we've broken Tyler's brain, back to the game here. Mariners actually pretty good offense. They are firing on all cylinders. They're going against Kaprielian here. Marginal pitcher, probably replacement level, deserves to be in a rotation, but probably should be a fifth starter in this one. I do like the Mariners because I like the way they have put together this lineup. Everybody is healthy, which is also a major bonus for them, and they are somewhat contrarian. It's going to be 4:15 local start out there in Oakland, so do keep that in mind. The vaunted marine layer of the West Coast will not be impacting this game. How do you feel about the Mariners offense, and is there anything redeeming about the Athletics?
So looking at the sorry, because I was still so
you were defending your stuff.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Mariners? There's nothing from Oakland that you feel.
So nothing from Oakland that I like. I don't like rostering Kaprielian, low strikeout pitcher, also just a bad pitcher. What I like about the Mariners side of the game is they're projected for almost no ownership, sub 3%. They have, for us, the fourth highest top stack odds on the slate. So once again, the way people are building lineups on this slate is they're going really cheap at offense with Coors Field. Well, in particular, not Coors Field, just the Giants side of the game, rostering teams like the Pirates or the Reds. And people aren't paying up at offense. And the Mariners have a really good matchup against James Kaprielian. Kaprielian this year has a 4.8 expected ERA, doesn't swing and miss bats. We know there's both a lot of power in the Mariners offense, and then there's also a lot of speed. The ballpark isn't ideal, but based on the ownership, I think this is a team to get to in large field tournaments.
Right. I see some people asking about early slate content. Did you know if you use the promo code MLB Strategy Show, all one word, MLB Strategy Show, you can slide on in here. Any 1 week package, 50% off. You could do the MLB only package. You could do the full premium package, but then you get it on demand. You get the actual content that is the premium behind the paywall content here at Stokastic. Promo code MLB Strategy Show. Coors Field, Greg, the Coors Field. Good times. Good times. Had some fun on Prize Picks. Darn you, Wilmer Flores. They hung a 7.5 fantasy point number on Wilmer Flores, and I went pretty heavy on that. I ended up making $11. I made nine cards for $95. Net at 11. That was not exactly what I was hoping for, but I'll be back at it at Prize Picks again tonight. Definitely looking towards the offensive players in this game. And while I will likely go under the field for my DFS purposes, I'll be all in on Prize Picks for this, especially with any of their home run props here. I would prefer to target Ryan Feltner as opposed to Alex Cobb, but we're not going to discriminate too much here. Anything you would like to mention about the pitchers, and what do you see from these offenses?
Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing you could say negative about the Giants, right? I know that yesterday they were terrible, and ultimately they did end up being really overowned in our tools heading into the slate yesterday. They do pinch hit, which could end up being very annoying. Like yesterday, I thought it was funny. They finally got their offense going. They get the base loaded, and immediately here come the pinch hitters. And then it's like Austin Slater has a 2-run single to get or was it a double? Whatever. It was to get the Giants back in the game, but he was a pinch hitter, so it didn't matter. That's always going to be a frustration when it comes to the Giants. For today, they're really popular again. Not quite as crazy as yesterday. 27% ownership on DK, 22% on FanDuel. I'm going to say the same thing I said about them yesterday, which is based on the current ownership. I don't think they really make a whole lot of sense as a 5-man stack. I do like them as a secondary stack in lower owned lineup. So like If I make a 5-man Seattle stack, or yesterday, for instance, I really liked the Braves. Nobody was owned on the Braves yesterday. You were able to play this team at like 1-2% ownership as a stack. Once you have that, it doesn't matter who the secondary plays are. You could be chalky. The entire lineup doesn't have to be contrarian. You just have to have individual pieces that are lower owned and you're good to go. So that's where I'm going to probably look to utilize the Giants again today, where I'll be making, 5-man stacks of teams like the Seattle Mariners or 5-man stacks of the Cardinals at lesser ownership. And then you mix in the Giants and you have overall what's going to be a lower owned stack. The team that I do like getting to, though, quite a bit is going to be the Colorado Rockies. And I like Alex Cobb. I think he's a very good pitcher and has been really unlucky this year. If you just look at the underlying stats, I think he's been really good. 3.1 ERA, 3.05 FIP. But it's Coors Field, and the Rockies aren't picking up ownership at home. Whenever that happens, I think it makes sense solely based on park factors.
So what do you think about, you're not worried, obviously, about the high ground ball rate for Cobb, the low XFIP, all that fun stuff to suppress the crooked numbers, as they say?
Yeah, no. Cobb is great. It's just, it's Coors Field and the Rockies aren't picking up ownership. And I'm willing to play a team of Coors Field.
Sorry, I missed the ownership.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Any low owned team at Coors Field against a non-elite starting pitcher, I'm down with it. Right. So it's, when it comes to Alex Cobb, I think he's a really solid pitcher. And I think his underlying stats show that. Like, it's the 3.1 ER, the 3.1 expected ERA, 3.05 FIP. He's a career best 25% K rate. But just weird things happen at Coors Field. And when you could get Colorado or a team they're going up against, there's never a time that a team is not popular going up against the Rockies in Coors Field. When Colorado themselves are low owned at Coors, it's usually sensible with upside.
All right. I do want to point out from the pinch hit perspective, Lucas Gilbreth is one of the two lefties. He did go 22 pitches last night. However, that is only his first action in the last 72 hours. Conceivably, he could come in today and knock out a couple of those lefties. Austin Gomber went 60 pitches out of the bullpen on Thursday. He usually goes 3 or 4 days between bullpen appearances. He's also spent some time as a starter, kind of piggybacked a little bit. I don't expect him to play today, so there's really only one lefty, but we know how quick of a hook the Giants manager has. So that can, it's Gabe Kapler, right, out there in San Francisco? Why am I blanking on that? Giants
could be. I don't think about
Gabe Kapler.
It is. Okay. I don't think about the managers too much, but yeah, it is him. And he's somebody who's ruined many lineups this year with pinch hitting.
Yes. All right. Let's, anything else you want to mention about the Coors Field extravaganza? Because that's what everybody likes to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're good. We're on to the next one.
Yeah, we can move on.
Cardinals going against Madison Bumgarner. You have Paul Goldschmidt, very familiar with the hitting environment there in Chase Field. I believe he got a home run last night. We got to like him and Nolan Arenado. Madison Bumgarner does an okay job of kind of limiting the home runs, but he is not really having the strikeout stuff anymore. He is getting by on guile and I guess good looks, depending on your take. But how are you feeling about the Cardinals? 5 implied run total here. Bumgarner has given up a handful of runs in all but one of his last 6 starts. Handful meaning close to 5, if I remember correctly when looking at it this morning. The roof will be closed tonight. I'll double check that, but it should still be warm enough for it to be closed. What is your take on the Redbirds going against Bumgarner?
Yeah, I think Bumgarner is very washed at this point in his career. 5.13 expected ERA, doesn't generate swing and misses. And the middle of that Cardinals lineup is so good against lefties. When you get to Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, even Albert Pujols this year has shown some life against left-handed pitchers. Like we've seen
a grand slam pinch hit the other night.
Yeah, after Senzatello blew his knee out. And, Pujols this year is finding a role for himself. Like overall, is he going to be somebody that's a great MVP caliber player? Absolutely not. But he's a 126 WRC plus this year. He's showing some power at the plate. The Cardinals have found ways to utilize him to make him effective as a part-time player, as a pinch hitter. So, they're getting a 126 WRC plus out of Albert Pujols. That's his best mark since 2012. It's been 10 years since Pujols has been this effective. It's certainly not something I saw coming. He's not an all-star or anything like that, but he's carving out a role for himself to be valuable on this team. And if he starts against Madison Bumgarner, which I assume will be the case, he's a decent play as well. It's a little annoying for DK purposes. You can't play Pujols and Goldschmidt in the same lineup. You kind of have to choose between them. And Goldschmidt is clearly the better hitter. He's the prohibitive favorite to an MVP and is starting to pull away with that. On FanDuel, you can roster both Pujols and Goldschmidt, and I think that makes sense. But yeah, based on current ownership, the Cardinals are popular. They're the third most popular offense on the slate, but they are going a little bit overowned because of all the ownership going to the Giants and the Pirates right now. So Cardinals, I do think they're a team to be overweight too.
So this is just ridiculous. Goldschmidt is $6,000 on DraftKings, more expensive than anybody in Coors Field. Manny Machado, $5,900, more expensive than anybody in Coors Field. Brandon Drury, same thing. Juan Soto, $6,300, same thing. The dichotomy on this slate is out of control. How are you feeling about anybody going against Dakota Hudson? He's had moments. I don't know what to do with him as a starter. It's been more disappointing than anything. I seem to get him wrong every time I want to target him. He scuffles along and limits the offense. Every time I land on him on a short slate or a second pitcher on one of the sub slates, he gets blown up. It's just been a disaster all the way around. I don't hate the Diamondbacks. They're just perfectly average. I do prefer them a little bit against lefties. No Ketel Marte in the lineup here. What say you for the Giants / Dakota Hudson angle?
So in terms of Dakota Hudson, there's two issues with him. First, from a real life standpoint, he's not good. And he also does not strike guys out. So he has a 13.4% K rate. He missed basically all of last year with an injury, only ended up pitching 8 innings, and he got hurt the year before. So his fastball velocity prior to getting injured was 94.1 miles per hour. It's 91.6 this year. Red flags. That's pretty concerning stuff. So the dip in velocities led to a big dip in strikeouts. As a result, I don't think he's a targetable player for DFS. But then on the other side, he's a really high ground ball rate pitcher, 53% this year, 56% for his career. So a Diamondbacks offense that isn't all that potent, but then also is going up against a heavy ground ball pitcher. I don't really see much reason to roster Hudson, nor do I see reason to stack the Diamondbacks against him.
All right. Marte has been out with a hamstring injury. I was just looking here at some season-long stats. I'm sure you haven't looked at season-long stats. His over-under on home runs this year, he has 373 at-bats. Do you think he has more or less than 15 and a half home runs?
15 and a half. What was 15 and a half? What was the line?
He has 373 at-bats. Would you say he has over or under 15 and a half home runs?
Over?
He has 10 home runs.
Okay. I didn't know off the top. I had a 50-50 shot. I just didn't know.
No, I know. I figured you would pick the under just the way I'd done it. So I tried to set it a little higher. Wow, that's not very good. He does have 32 doubles. So he has been getting extra base hits. They just have not been home runs thus far this season. 2 more games to go. We've got about 10 minutes, and we'll do these 2 games, and then I'll quickly race through the early slate since I've done some content for it. We've got Josiah Gray, who leads the league in home runs allowed. We've got Joe Musgrove, who has been a whole lot of meh recently, but this is the perfect get right spot. Neither of these players faced the respective opponent when the Padres were in the nation's capital last weekend. But you get Josiah Gray just feels like he's going to be giving up at least 1, if not 2 home runs tonight. He has like 2.4 home run per 9 on the season. The strikeouts have been adequate, but this is a team you don't want to trifle with here. So no real interest in Gray. Musgrove, I think a phenomenal pitcher. He has gone, I believe, just over 100 pitches in 2 of his last 3 starts. Someone is going to no-hit the Nationals between now and the end of the season. Could Musgrove get no-hitters 2 years in a row? We will find out tonight. How do you feel about this game, and why is it Friars and only Friars?
Well, it's not for me. I think Josiah Gray, just based on him picking up no ownership and his strikeout upside, is worth playing in tournaments, because Josiah Gray has been pretty unlucky this year. He is in terms of some of the metrics, like he's a 3.96 expected ERA compared to a 4.79 ERA. He's giving up a ton of home runs, and that is something I would expect to normalize to some extent. A 19.5% home run to fly ball rate, I think, would come down. in the future, but I think both sides make sense. Like I think the Padres are targetable against Josiah Gray because there's a lot of firepower in the offense and they're very low on today. People are sick of the Padres. This is a team that was so popular, so many slates after the Juan Soto and Josh Bell trade, and they've let down so many times that nobody's rostering them, but nobody's playing Josiah Gray either. And I think that he's a pitcher who, when he struggles, he gives up a lot of home runs. But when he's on, he generates a bunch of strikeouts. He has a 27% K rate. He strikes out 10.5 hitters per 9 innings. So there's upside in Josiah Gray. There's upside in the Padres. And the field isn't playing either side of it. So I like both of that. And then as far as Musgrove goes, kind of a no-brainer at pitcher today. He's really popular, but for good reason. He's had a good season. He has good strikeout numbers. So it's a 3.2 unexpected ERA, 24.2% K rate for Musgrove. And the Nationals offense is just total garbage. So Musgrove makes a whole lot of sense. And then Padres and Josiah Gray, stuff that I think makes sense in large field tournaments.
Yeah, and that's I do like that the Padres are a little bit expensive tonight. Anything that keeps the popularity away from them, I will do similar to what I did last night, and that they will be one of my higher on stacks. I tried it with Toronto last night. It was okay. Of course, the Baltimore-Boston game really just splashed everything, but the thesis was sound. The execution was good. The results, well, Baltimore and Boston happened. Final game of the night, we're going to have Dustin May coming back after Tommy John surgery. This will be his first appearance. I think he got up to, I don't have it open now, but I think he got up to around 80 pitches in the minor leagues, but he is 9,100 on DraftKings. He's going against the Marlins. They have just a 2.8 implied run total here. Dustin May, an intriguing option at that price. Unlikely a lot of people are going that route. I would estimate 75 pitches would probably be a realistic outcome here. Your pitch per dollar, not a great value, but as we said, pricing tonight is broken on DraftKings by Pittsburgh, by Albert Pujols, by the Giants, etc. So that really doesn't matter. How all the caveats wrapped around Dustin May. Any interest in the Ginger Syndergaard here?
No, well, number one, is really expensive, but then point two, realistically, how deep is he going into the game when he hasn't made a major league start in, such a considerable amount of time? So there's a lot of talent in Dustin May for sure, but who knows what he's going to look like? What does his velocity look like? He used to throw nearly 100 miles per hour. Is he still that guy after surgery? I don't know. We're going to find out today. In terms of his rehab starts, 5 innings in his last couple, probably a reasonable expectation, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 innings or 80 pitches. Based on his price point, I can't roster him in DFS. There's a lot of good pitchers to get to today, but I'm not really looking to stack against him either because the Marlins offense has been fairly crappy over the last couple of months. Really, since the Jazz Chisholm injury, things started to go downhill for them. And then on the other side of the game, I don't want to roster Braxton Garrett against the Dodgers. And then the Dodgers individually as a stack, they're fairly popular today. They're also really expensive, so they're not going to fit into the lineups that I'm looking to build.
All right. For those wondering, I did pull it up. 62, 68, and 70 pitches for Dustin May in his last 3 starts. That was for the Oklahoma City Dodgers in AAA in the PCL. He, for those of you who wanted to know some stolen base numbers, 2 in each of his last 2 games. Just real quickly hitting on Prize Picks. Reminder, if you guys sign up with Prize Picks, use the promo code AWESEMO. Use the promo code AWESEMO. And you'll get a deposit match up to your first $100. That money comes out of your account first. You don't even have to do anything special for it. So it makes sense to put in $100 and then you're playing with house money. On the other side, you will also get 30 days of Stokastic premium content when you sign up using our promo code. You can click on the link below us in the description or head over to prizepicks.com or download them in the App Store or on Google Play. It is a sports wagering / DFS contest for prop picks. They allow same game cards. You build cards with 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions. You have a variety of payout options. If you pick 5, you get all 5 for 5 right. You get 10x. If you get 4 or 5 right, you still double up. If you want the Eric Lindquist does a lot of videos for them and talks about them a lot. And I agree with him. You want to look at double stacking 2 home run wagers and then taking someone from the trio of those home run wagers and making a 4 question card and going with the 10x option. Yes, if you fail to get all 4, you get nothing, but you can turn $5 into 50 very quickly or 10 into 100 if you're doing my stuff. If you're doing Lindy's stuff, he usually likes to play in $25 or $50 increments, so he can rack up the money a lot more quickly. salt to taste on these things. That's what we got to look at. But it's a lot of fun over there. Currently, they have cards and questions posted for MLB, NFL preseason, WNBA, NFL full season, MMA, CSGO, soccer. What else do we have? The NFL full season is the NFL futures. You can bet on season long yardage, touchdown totals, also all sorts of fun stuff there. Tennis, WNBA, Canadian Football League, League of Legends, and I'm not done. Lacrosse, NASCAR, disc golf, whatever the hell DFB football is. I don't know what that is, but I know CFB football coming up here. That would be college football. We're looking at that coming right around the corner. But you know what's coming up next? Matt Kajeski and Dave Lochran talking a little NFL preseason live before lock here. Greg, final thoughts before we get on out of here.
Yeah, League of Legends is actually when EMac and his friends play softball. Let's do a really quick over, because I know you have no clue what the hell it is. Really quick overview of actually, you probody do know because you played.
We're attacking towers. I tried to watch it during the pandemic. It just looked like Pigpen with everything moving around.
Quick overview of the early slate before we toss this over to the preseason guys. So like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are looking for preseason information, also, there's nobody to go to better than Matt Kajeski coming up next. Dude knows everything about football. It's crazy. It doesn't even make sense. Favorite stack for the early slate is probably going to be the Milwaukee Brewers going up against Marcus Stroman. He just hasn't been quite the same this year. There's been a little bit of a drop off from him. So Brewers are probably going to be the stack that I get to the most. And then in terms of pitchers on the early slate, we've got Garrett Cole going up against the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a tough matchup, but there's so much strikeout upside in Garrett Cole that I think it makes sense. And then Reed Detmers is a pitcher I've not really rostered much this year, but has been a totally different pitcher since getting recalled from the minor league. Strikeout rate is way high. He had a start in AAA where he had like 13 strikeouts in 7 innings, and the Angels just called him back up, and the strikeouts just started coming after he was a guy who pitched to contact and didn't generate strikeouts early in the year. So that's it. That's the really quick overview of the early slate. If you guys have more questions, hit me up on Twitter.
All right, and I also dropped the free article into Slack or into the YouTube chat here, where I do actually break down Reed Detmer as the pitcher of choice, as well as the Chicago Cubs or the Brewers going against the Cubs, and what to do if the weather is an issue there. That's going to be a 2:20 Eastern start, so there are backup plans for that. There's a couple games in the 4 o'clock hour, so you do have some outs depending on what happens there with the weather. But thank you for watching the show. Please hit that thumbs up on the way out. We appreciate it. With that, you can follow Greg on Twitter at G Ehrenberg DFS. I am at EMac DFS, and of course, it is Stokastic _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.